going to do, I'm going to start the presentation now. Thanks again for coming to this scenario creation and comparison with Safran Risk. This is our, I guess, 5th masterclass on Safran Risk's features. Before we did one about cost, the costs module, the cost breakdown structure module. We did one about correlations, and we did one about calendar risks. All of them are in our website. I will show them at the end of the presentation, right? So today we're going to talk about scenarios, right? Why is it that they are important, and why is it that I've seen that during this training, I've been doing training for more than 2 years for Safran Risk, and I've seen that it's a little bit underutilized, and that's a good thing, because that's why we're here, to help you hopefully utilize it at the max, right? So we're going to touch on how is it that scenarios are model independent. What does it mean? What does it mean that you can use multiple reports into one? What's the process of using it? We're going to create one, and we're going to use a couple of things like trending, exporting scenarios, and we're going to finish it with adding, for example, a complex scenario, adding information from different models to the same report, right? So, Aman, can you hear me? You can hear me, Aman? Yes, thank you. See, Rani, I'm so sorry. Maybe it's your connection, but we're going to be recording this. But yeah, this is being recorded, and if you don't hear audio is working, thank you, Andre. And feel free to send your questions in the chat. So let's start. Okay. So first of all, distribution comparison. Distribution comparison is a feature that you have in Safran Risk, which is here, right? And you see that I open Safran Risk, and when I open Safran Risk, I haven't yet opened any model. And that means that if I go to the distribution comparison here, that is going to be empty, right? If this is the first time that you use Safran Risk, this is going to be empty, right? That means that this has the potential of having, right? And this is what I'm saying here, right? This is not model dependent. This is model independent, meaning that you can open as many reports as you want, right? And configure as many reports as you want, even without opening a model, right? Normally people, and that's what we've seen, people think that this is model dependent, and it's not. That means that if you click here where it says reports, you can have many reports here. For example, you can have a weather risk impact that I did before. I did it yesterday. I did this weather report impact, and I can come back here and say, well, this is a test report, and open there, you see, with the reports tab here, right? So now you know what is model independent. You see, that means, and this sets up, right, the scene to say that this is an application-wide feature that you have, meaning that all these reports that I have here and the ones that you want, for example, you can add one just by clicking add report, and you open it here, right? That means that they are model independent. That's great to know. Why? Because, for example, if Aman sends me a model or a report that he previously exported, for example, I can go here, go to this weather risk impact, export the report like this, right? This is going to export it in an XML file. I can open this report without having to open his model, which is great, right? That means that I don't need to have the model or the models that he used to build the report to open it, right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to share with you, and that's mostly unknown, right? That you can use this without opening any model, right? That's why this is model independent. You can have the capability of generating multiple reports, as I show you here. You can go here to this reports tab, and you can add as many as you want, right? Or you can delete. I just added one, but I can delete, for example, this one here. I can delete this, and that's it, because this is going to be saved in Safran Risk database. So we're going to open one. We're going to leave this empty, right? Why is that? Because we're going to work with this, right? Now, this is not related to the model open, which means I can open scenario report without the need of opening any model. Now, the scenario comparison, what is it? What is it? It's a feature from Safran Risk that lets you compare different scenarios, right? These scenarios can be from the same model or from different models simultaneously. That means that I can have a report, for example, a report here that has these 3 S curves like the one here that come from, I don't know, model X, B1, and this is, for example, uncertainty and risks, scenario 1, scenario 2, etc. Or what I can do, I can have different models like this, and all the models are going to generate a different curve in this model here, like this. Right? So that means that you can have one model generating different scenarios or different models that generating different scenarios, meaning that you can have a really good track record. If you're monitoring the same project with different files, you can add them to the report. Right? That's why it's super powerful, and that's what I'm trying to say here. Right now, you have the multiple reports as I showed you before. That's great. Now, what is the process to generate one report? First of all, you select one open, right? Or select one report like the one that I did. For example, I selected this one, right? This one here. It's totally empty. So I can say this is going to be a webinar report, right? Here I have the description. Test report to show comparison feature. Right? And here I can add more notes, my notes here. You can add more notes, right? Where this report is who's the owner of the report, when it was generated, etc., right? Like this. The name and the description are going to come here. You see, webinar report, test report. You see that you can have, let me change that, and you can have, you see, webinar report, test report. So they are, you can see them to easily identify. Right? That's one. So this is selected, and this is the first part of it, right? Let me open a model. I have a model prepared for this, right? So let me open a model. This is the typical model that we see in our trainings. So then what we're going to do, we are going to do exactly what, as you said, Ben, we're going to compute individual curves and overlay them. That's exactly, and what says Carla, yes, you are going to receive the slide deck after the masterclass. Yeah, when we publish the video, we will send the slide deck is as an attachment if you like. Of course, normally we like people to send us an email saying that I want the slide deck. Otherwise, it's an attachment, and sometimes people don't like that, right? So this is the model here. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to go deep into that. This is a very simple model that we use for training. The model has some risks here. You see, some standard risks. We have 2 calendars like this, 2 calendar risks, and we have 3 estimated uncertainties, right? So we have the complete risk mapping capabilities here, which is we use estimated uncertainties for the tasks. We added some risks as well, you see, and we added some pre and post mitigation distributions. Why is that? Because we're going to create some scenarios, right? So that means, for example, in the design risk, that you will have a probability for this risk to occur of 50%. Then you have the impact of the risk, which is here between, let's say, 80 and 150%, right? And in this case, for example, you don't have a post-mitigation setup. So I can do it here. I can do a post-mitigation setup, schedule impact here, right? And I can do, for example, from 95 to 100 to 120. Of course, I'm on purpose, I'm attenuating in the post-mitigation scenario the effect. This should be at least 100%, you will think, right? Remember, this is a simple model, but if this is a risk, most likely this should be 100%. So otherwise, you're going to have the opposite effect, right? That's one. And I have the risk mapping. So I have here the tasks. So let me show you my tasks here, right? And remember, for the uncertainties, you have here 1 uncertainty per task. Here, for the risks, you have the risk mapping, right? I did that before. So what I'm going to do, and this is my recommendation here, this is always my recommendation. You open a model, that's fine. You run a simulation, but before you run a simulation, right? Because normally these are the technical process, right? But normally you will have to design the scenario report. Why is that? Because what is it that you're trying to see? You see, if you don't know the answer, I'm sorry, if you don't know the question, it's very difficult to get the answer. So what I'm going to do, and this is what I wanted to show to you, is I'm going to do 3 curves, right? I'm going to do first uncertainty only. I want to see the effect of uncertainty. I want to see the uncertainty plus risks before mitigation, or the current risks, and then uncertainty plus risks after the mitigation, right? So what I will see, and this is what I expect, right, is that first of all, I'm going to see a curve like this. This is uncertainty. But then if I do add risks, what's going to happen, you know, is the curve is going to go like this, but this is going to be from here to here. But after I see that, right, after we do that, I want to do the uncertainty post, meaning that this is going to come back a little bit like this, right? Like that. This is what's going to occur, right? So what I'm going to do exactly as that. The nice thing about this, let me show you here in Safran Risk, is that it's very easy to do. It's very, very easy to do. So first of all, I'm going to create my scenario. So you remember here in the Analyze tab, I will create my scenario here. Only add uncertainties. I will see 1,000 iterations and run the analysis like this, right? Let me see here on my finish date. Oh my, what happened here? Scheduling cost. Did I, maybe I over, oh, here, I don't have here, thank you. I don't have anything in my post. It's good. So I have to go to my pre-mitigation, because in my uncertainties, I only have my pre-mitigation. Good to know. So now I have it. I go to my finish date here. Let's see, here you go. So go to the finish date, and I can choose, and this is something that, for example, people don't know, that you can choose which variable you want to use. If you want, I can add the duration, or I can add the finish date. I'm going to add the finish date. So what I will do, remember, I have my distribution comparison empty here, right? So what I will do, I will go to the distribution graphic, and I will say send to comparison, like this. And this is going to send the curve, you see, and automatically will move you from the distribution graphic here to the distribution comparison here. And you see, now you have the curve with the finish date. If I would do duration, here in the x-axis, you will have the duration. Now, the tip, and this is one of the best practices here, is that you will have to always change. You see, this is the legend that you see here. If you don't change it, what happens is that the next one, it will take the name of the file. So normally what you will do is you'll change the name, for example, uncertainty only, like this, like that. Then I will go to the next scenario, right? Because this is my first curve. I already set up my percentiles here, right? Remember that you have in Safran Risk something that it's called the focus percentiles. So, and then you can set up your focus percentiles here. So I set up 50 and 80, but if you like, you can set up the focus percentiles here, right? Now, what we will do, we'll go back to the Analyze tab and say, well, okay, that's fine, but now I need all the risks here. So I'm going to choose here all the risks and uncertainties, because I want the compound effect, right? You see that happens. It says the risk model has changed, right? And then I have to run the analysis again. So what's going to happen, and this is something that I have in the material, and you will see, right? Take a look to the shape of the distribution, right? The shape of the distribution is like this, is by model now. In the material here, you see, we did the uncertainty first, and then we created uncertainty and risks, right? Like that. So what's going to happen, I'm going to say, well, send to comparison. Again, you see how easy it is. The only thing that you will have to have is this selected. So I will say, send to comparison, like this. And then you have the curve here, right? Like that. So this is going to be the uncertainty and risks pre-mitigated. Remember, everything has to have the complete name and last name, otherwise you will forget, right? Now, what we will do, you see we have 2, and now we can play a little bit with this. What you can do, you can say, for example, compare against uncertainty, you see, or you can compare against the other, like this, you see? So you can change the order where they are comparing stuff like this, you see? Minus 393, or you can change the order depending on how you're looking at things. Here you have all the descriptive statistics. These are descriptive statistics of the models. So for example, here, these are the uncertainty only statistics or the uncertainty and risks, right? So this is the same descriptive statistics section that you have after you run a simulation, this one here, right? So it's a mix of this, right? It doesn't have all this detail, right? When you go here in the distribution comparison. What else you can do, you see that what it says is that I added 393 days because of that, right? So what I can do, and this is what I'm going to do, remember that I changed on purpose one project risk here. Remember that it was very, very high. So I'm going to move it back to 80, 100%, 150, 80, 100%, 120, right? Like this. Let's say that you want to change that. So what I can do, I can eliminate this line like this. You click here and delete distribution. Go ahead, you see, now you only have one. You don't have to eliminate the whole graphic, only one. I run the analysis again, right? And this is something that you will do all the time, right? And then you see, now we have this. Maybe the change was very, very small. And I send to comparison again. Remember what was the scenario, right? I did everything here, right? So I will back here, the distribution graphic, send to comparison, and again, I change it back. You see, it was 392 days. It was more or less the same, right? So what you can do, you can use this to test what are the things that you're including or not. For example, if you go to the drivers, if you go to a driver's report here, and you see that the ash cloud is the biggest of the risks, maybe you have to do something about that here in the project risk, in the ash cloud, right, to see what happens and see how it changes. So you can generate a new scenario with a new change in the ash cloud and validate what are the changes in the scenario comparison, the distribution comparison, right? And you see now what's the mechanics, right? The main idea is that you can play with the project risks configuration, with the mapping configuration, and with including or not the risks pre and post here. Then you run the simulation, run the analysis, and then you will see what happens in a distribution comparison. As simple as that, right? Now, what happens next, right? Because I already have two scenarios. And as I said, what else you can do? Of course, I can change to a report. Let's imagine that you want this same curve to go here. So you go here, and then I can send it back. You see the same report, I can say, send it to comparison, you see, and now I have it in another report. If I want this curve to be replicated in different reports, I will go back to the webinar report that we have here, right, where we have 392 days. Right. Now, what else we can do? We can clear the graphic. I'm not going to do that, right? You're about to delete all distributions. I'm not going to clear the graphic, but this is going to clear everything. You have to be very careful, of course, because if some of the scenarios will take a lot of time, it depends on how big is your model, right? So this can, erase a lot of time, and maybe you will have to do it all over again. What else you can do here? You can export the graphic as a PNG graphic. And we're going to go to the export and import in a minute, right? Now, so let me do this again. This is the uncertainty and risks pre, right? So what I will do next, right? I will go back to the Analyze tab, change my scenario here to post, but of course be very careful because for my uncertainties, remember, I don't have post mitigated scenarios. I only have pre. So for all the risks, as you see here, right? I have post scenario. You see that I have also a probabilistic branching scenario here. You don't worry about that. It doesn't have a post here, so I only have pre, that's why. And we're going to see what happens. What I did, and you can see that in the project risks, is that I added, for some of them, not for all of them, right, some post scenarios like this. And they are all mitigated. For example, here, the ash cloud, which is the biggest one, goes from 20 days to 5 days, 15 days, etc. Let me show you here, right? This is the ash cloud. It goes from 20 to 40 days with a 40% probability. but the post-mitigated probability, take a look here, it goes to 10%. And 10%, you see that now it's 5 days, 15 days, and 16 days, the impact. So remember that you can add both relative and absolute impact here. What you have here, you see this applied to each or spread over, are new features that we have in Safran Risk, where you can, for example, spread over the total. For example, you have 25 days and you have 5 mappings, so you can spread over in all mappings, meaning that you will have 5 each, or you apply to all of them. All of that we normally see in the training courses, in the fundamentals, we see this, right? I think that we're going to do a webinar about that because this is something that we get questioned a lot. We got a lot of questions, and I think it's a very important feature, right? Now, what we're going to do, we're going to run a new scenario. You see how simple this is. So you run a new scenario here, right? You run the analysis, right? And now we have a different scenario. What you can do, you just make sure that you have the right report here, and then you go to the distribution graphic and say send to comparison. And you see it happened more or less what we had in mind, right? Because of all the mitigation actions, right? Now we reduce this from 392 days to 45, right? Why is that? Why is that? Remember what we saw is that in the risk mappings, I'm sorry, in the project risk here, we decrease the probability from 40 to 10%, and we decrease the impact as well. You see? This was 20, 25, and 40 to 5, 15, and 16, right? So what's going to happen? What happens if we only mitigate the impact, but not the probability? So what I'm going to create is a new one, it's a new scenario that's going to maintain the 40% probability that I had before, like this. So in the distribution comparison that I have here, right? So it's going to be uncertainty, risks, post-mitigated, let's say V1, then I'm going to run the model again. But you see how simple it was. I just changed this to 40, I left it in 40%, right? But now we're going to compute the effect of changing the impact only. The probability will remain the same, right? So I will go here, run the analysis again, you see? Send to comparison, right? And now we see what was the effect. You see, this was uncertainty, risks, post B3, for example. And now we know that this was the effect. So the effect of diminishing the probability from 40% to 10%, right, was around 150 days, more or less. You see, or I guess it's the difference between 392 and 156. Let me see. It would be like 110 days, I guess, like this, right? So it was this difference. You see, in the first one, in the very optimistic one, we went all this way. And let's say with scenario number 2 or consulting company number 2, this is the one that we're going to get, right? From 392 to 156, right? So we can analyze as many scenarios as we like. That's the good thing about this. You see, the trick, and this is what I would say, is the tricks you will have, right, to think which are the scenarios that you want to add. And that's the thing, because you see what happens here. It becomes so simple to generate all of these things, because it's so simple that it's very easy to get lost. That's one thing. Number 2, it's very easy to forget about this, and suddenly you have 5, 6, 10 curves, one overlaid on top of each other, and then you just don't know which one is which. So that's why my tip and my recommendation is that every time that you add a new one, you will be able, and you have to change the title. That's number 2. Number 3, I know in version 25, I'm running 22.2.50. I hope version 25 is released during this month. At least that's what I was told, that you can change the colors in version 25. You see that here you will have to learn, until today, we will have to learn the sequence, right? This is green goes first, and then you go to red, then you go to yellow, then you go to purple like this, right? So, but you can compute as many as you want. What would be my recommendation? Do not put more than 4 or 5 on top of each other, right? They are not going to be easy to follow. So my recommendation would be use 4, 5, you see, and then you can tell the story. The nice thing about this, and this is how I like to tell the story with Safran Risk, you don't need PowerPoint or Gamma or any of these slide deck, because I prefer to tell the story like this. Imagine that we finish the report, right? And then we have something like this, and it's very simple to say, well, if we add uncertainty only, right, our PAT is going to be October the 10th, 2015, right? If we add risks, this is almost a year later, right? It goes to November 2016. But we have two scenarios, right? We can mitigate, we can apply and invest a lot of money mitigating this, right? So if that happens, we're just going to have a 45 days extension, because we're going to almost eliminate the ash cloud. Maybe this is for a drone facility that is going to be built, so maybe we just build it in another place. Or this could be that we just mitigate that and we put some protection, or we just move it marginally, etc. We have, you know how it is, you have nuances in all these projects that sometimes represent thousands or millions of dollars. So my recommendation here is that you use this to present, right? Now, what you can tell me, and this is something that we know, is that sometimes people don't like to see the curves like this, because they like to see the typical Gaussian curve like this, right? The perfect Gaussian curve. And even looking at it is not very nice, because they don't understand what happens in the back. My recommendation then is just focus on the table. This is going to be your result, this, right? And this is going to be scenario A, scenario B, etc. And don't even show the curves. Because if your audience is not well versed in distribution and you know, and statistics and all that, you're going to spend more time trying to explain what the cumulative tension function is doing, rather than focusing on which alternative you're going to use, right? How much is going to take? Can we mitigate it more? Can we apply it to more risks, etc., etc., right? So this is how you will build one of this, right? Which is here, right? So all of this is step-by-step explained here for each risk, scenarios, etc. Now, another feature, I'm going to use this one to use one feature that this one nobody uses, which is called trending, which is here, right? And what you can do with trending is that you can timestamp each one of the scenarios, right? From the same model or from different models. So what you will do, you will click here. Remember, we have 4 scenarios here. So you click trending and you will see what happens, right? Is that the model, you have a new column here, column called model date, right? And what happens is that this can let you timestamp the different analysis that you made to the same model. For example, let's say that this model date, the uncertainty only, we finished this by, I don't know, November last year, November the 10th last year, like this. Then the uncertainties and risks pre-mitigated, we finished by December, right? So for example, here, right? So take a look to what happens, right? Take a look where your P50 and your P80 were, right? For each one of the dates, right? Then uncertainty and risks were finished in January, say here, and this was finished in February, like that, like this. Let's say this was finished, I don't know, February, like this, right? So this is what happens, right? Is that at the beginning, this was our P50 and P80, right? Remember that this was P50 and P80, right? And then what happened is that after we added the risks, take a look to what happened with our P80, right? It's very interesting. You see what happened to your P80? It was very high. So basically they increased. They went up a lot, right? But with scenario one was here. Of course, here you cannot have 2 scenarios at the same time, right? You cannot do this. You cannot validate what was the difference here and compare with this. You cannot do that. You're assuming that each one is a sequence of the previous one, right? And here you can move, you see, where you are. Am I here? Am I here? Am I here? Or am I here? You see? So the nice thing about this is that also you can see how things work. What's going to happen, let me eliminate this distribution, is that normally how is this curve going to be, the trending curve, right? Normally you go like this in a regular project, then it goes like that, and then slowly is going to hopefully converge to a number that you wanted to see, right? Why is that? Because you're going to be having less uncertainty because the project is moving forward. But the only thing that you will have to do here with the training is changing the model date. This model date doesn't have to be the exact same model date where you actually build the report. You can just change it at your will here. We did November, you see here, November 2025. Oh, this is what happened. This was what, January? Oh no, this is okay, January, etc., etc. So you can play a little bit with the dates. This is a toggle, so meaning that you can go back like this or like this. So now you know how to use trending, which is a very simple capability. And now the nice thing about this is that you can have one model here. That was the, I don't know, the baseline model. Oops. One model here, which is the baseline model. But then you have model version 1, model version 2, etc., right? Version 1, version 2. And what happens is that you can add from each one of these models to the same report and do a trending of this. So my take is that some of you guys are doing this by hand, right? You have to take this, export it, sometimes you have to export the sample sometimes, or sometimes you export the report and you do it by hand in Excel or things like that. In this case, you already had it. If you were Safran Risk users, you already had it like this. It's already there. Right? I'm not sure if in the new version you can change the comments here. I know that you can add or eliminate the legends here like this, but I'm not sure. I hope you can do it. Otherwise, what I will do is I will export the graphic like this as a PNG. You can copy the graphic, of course, and this is going to copy this, right? And then you can do it on your own. Right? But that is trending. You see that it's very straightforward, this trending capability, right? Now, what else you can do? I have this, and I am show you here in the slide deck step by step that you have to change that into the model date. Now, scenario exporting. Right now, if you exported one scenario, this is going to export, you see, to an XML file. To this, for example, scenarios.xml file. You can send this, for example, I can send it to a man is going to open it here using the import option here, and he will be able to see exactly what I'm looking at right now here. He can change this, and he will see, you see that when you change the curve here, see, this changes as well, right? So you can see all the statistical description for all of them. Now, what you can do, and this is what I did one in, I saw somebody doing this in Excel. No, I didn't do it. I saw somebody doing that in Excel, but if you open it, let me show you here. If you open scenarios.xml, that's a nice thing because this is open, right? XML is totally open. You see everything. So what you can see, of course, I'm not telling you in any way that you should process this yourself, but you have the name of the, you see, you have the name of the scenario. This is a finish date. These are all the samples, right? They come in what they call Gregorian date, right? And then you have more, right? And you have all of them here. So what I did, and that's what I imagine you will do too, right? I went to, in this case, I prefer ChatGPT, and I said, you know, I want you, let me show you here, I want you to create a nice prompt. First of all, I played a little bit with this and say, well, this is the format here. Let me show you here. This is the format. Right? This is the prompt, right? So what I did, this is the prompt, you're a quantitative, the role, the input, an XML file where I put all of that, right? Because you read it and it's very simple to understand. And now I'll have the prompt, so I'm very happy to give it to you, right? parse the XML for each block, build the scenario, etc. Because one of the shortcomings that some people ask, and I understand because I come from this way too, is that some people would like to have, let me eliminate this one, it's too many, right? Some people would like to have the typical histograms overlapped, right? Like this. Sometimes people like it because when you have 2 or 3, and here, for example, you don't have that capability. So what I did, I generated this nice prompt, right? And I generated the prompt and say improve it, so it generated an even better prompt and generated this, right? Which is here, right? In the outcomes, right? You can see the same graphics that I had. I said put P80, you have the uncertainty pre and post, and also generate this one on top of each other. You see that sometimes they don't help that much, but I use histograms, and I imagine you do too, to look for tails, right? Like this. I know that, and you might tell me, yeah, but you can look for tails here. Yeah, but I don't have the histogram effect, right? And the histogram effect for me is very important. So that's why I like to generate this like that. So remember that you have that as well. So you have that capability, and you can do this with any function that you have from Safran Risk. Remember that it's very, very open. In this case, I use the XML one, meaning that you can add this on top of any model that you have the moment that you do a comparison. If somebody has Safran Risk and you don't, you can just ask for the XML and apply the prompt, right? That would be another way of looking at it. Remember, perhaps you're just looking to validate, and instead of you sending this in as a PDF file, because this is replacing the PDF, right? Right. Of course, you can generate it yourself, but if you don't know, or your counterparty doesn't know how to put this XML into ChatGPT, so then you can ask for the XML, and then you can do it yourself. Of course, you won't have the capability as I did, at least with this prompt, to navigate, to turn it on and off, and see the descriptive statistics, etc. But maybe you just improve the prompt, and that's it, right? So that would be another idea that I'm giving to you, right? So you can get the most of this, right? Finally, complex scenarios, and this is the last demo I want to show you. It's very simple, and this is what I did. Remember, I have this webinar report. So what I can do is I can close it. I can close the project in Safran, and I'm going to open another project, and this is the typical project that I always use. So I hope the dates are more or less in the same ranges, right? So I don't have something in 10 years later, and then the model is it's totally wrong. But let's say that I open a different model, maybe a historical model that I did, and I say, I want to take a look to it. So let me open it. You see, I have the same model. Yeah, this is 2015. That's great. So what I can do, maybe what I can say is take, I'm going to run this model, but only with, I don't know, with this 5 risk. Remember that you have total flexibility here, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to use 1,000 iterations. I run the model like this. And remember, the trick is that you will have to have this selected, the model where you want to add, you see, the placeholder. So I go here in the distribution graphic, click send to comparison, and now I have, you see, a new model, or maybe historical model. I don't know, what was going to be done by Acme. So this is the one that Acme was going to do. So these are going to be complex scenarios because you can add one or more scenarios from different models at the same time. Remember, even without having to open the models. Of course, I have to open the model to send it. But for example, if I send this to a man, I am having these 3 curves. This 1, 2, and 3 are from model A, and this one here is from model B. And a man, he doesn't have to have any of these models. He's just going to receive the XML, right? So this is what we call complex models. Of course, I can run everything, whatever the source of the model. So for example, here I can generate this, or I can generate and have more reports. I can do all of this with different models as well. When you export it, it's not going to be exported differently, etc. It's just treated as a regular source. The only thing is that it's a different model than the one that you have open. That's why you will see this option when you close the model. You see here, you close the model. That's why it's so important that you have this option available. Maybe you were wondering why, and now you know, right? Because this was model independent, right? Like this, right? So I'm not sure if you have questions. We just wanted to take like 35, 40 minutes from you. Yes, Carla, thanks for the question. For example, here I have this model that is resource loaded. So you can use it for both schedule and cost. For all of the 4 variables that you have now in the distribution graphic, you see that you have finish date, start date, duration, and cost. You can send all of these curves to the comparison, which is a great question. Yes, a great question, right? And here, and I know, and hopefully it happens, that there's a 5th variable that comes in version 25, which is float. So if float is here, you can send the float as well. For example, you can do this, send to comparison. Let me see here. Let me run it. Run analysis. Distribution. Oh, I'm sorry. And here it is. You see, I have the finish date in dates, and you have the cost like this. But it's very important. It's very important to untoggle the trending. Otherwise, you will have this, and you will think that you're doing something wrong. So this is great that it happened to me too. So you have to untoggle it, right? Any other question? Any other question? It was a great one, Carla, because I wanted to show you that here. Yes, thank you, Ben. When I started here, I clicked on these 3, remember these 3 uncertainties, right? Uncertainty 1, 2, and 3, which are here in the project risks, right? Which are here. These are uncertainties only. So that means that I included the 3. I can include one with only the low uncertainties, only the high uncertainties. I can cherry pick however I like. But yes, that's how I picked it. Remember that you have the amount of flexibility that you have here. It's outstanding. So that's how I would like to do this type of scenario. One typical scenario is cost benefit analysis for risk mitigation. For example, here in the design risk, let me see here in the risks. Imagine you have the design risk. You have a mitigation action that could take duration, that could take cost, etc. So you can see if the mitigation action that is going to cost you actual money is going to be moving the needle, right, of your P80, P70, whichever percentile that you use, is going to be worth it, right? Maybe I spent $50,000 and my P80 is going to be back 300,000. So this is going to be worth it or not. I would say yes, but of course it depends on every company. But thank you for the question. Any other questions? Well, if not, I'm going to send you an email with the presentation, with the prompt. The prompt is going to be this little file here. It's going to be this little file here. That's going to be a TXT file. Right? Very happy to do it. And any reason, wallet. Yeah, normally this is my rule of thumb, right? For the uncertainties, I normally use per distribution. In this case, I'm not sure why we chose triangular, but normally here, if it's uncertainty, equal per distributions. Why? Because normally they respond to AAC classes or more historical information analysis, right? And when you do expert elicitation or expert estimation, I do triangular because it gives a little bit more of weight to the extremes, right? That defends a little bit the estimation, so you can go to more extremes, right?